Welcome to a super hot edition of Hacking TV.
This week, internet video services are making documentaries that take on serious topics and hope to have a real impact on the world.
Now a doc may be getting a convicted murderer out of jail. Is it justice by Netflix?
Even more new media startups are cashing checks from old media giants.
And speaking of startups, we'll check out a passel of new video startups who are doing some very cool things and some weird things.
All that and more weird things on this week's edition of Hacking TV.
Hacking TV. Hey, Saul, how are you?
I am good. I haven't melted yet.
Yeah, it's a hot week. Like the irony, of course, being it's actually hot. But let's just jump right in. We've got a lot to cover, and this Netflix thing, is a big deal.
So tell us what the Netflix thing we're talking about is.
So Netflix ordered up a documentary series called Making of a Murderer, and as a viewer, there were pieces of it that you watched and you said to yourself, this just isn't possible. Like this, certainly one of the convictions, unless they massively manipulated the footage in the edit room, which everyone says they didn't, there was such a miscarriage of justice that you watched it and you just pounded your head against the screen saying, how is it possible that the police can interview a mentally incapacitated young man who clearly is underage and get him to essentially confess to a murder that he clearly didn't commit and then go to prison for essentially life. And we just heard just days ago now that they've looked at it again, and all things being equal, it's 97% he's going to be released.
So we can chalk this up to Son of Serial. And it was a couple months ago that the NPR spin, or the murderer, or the alleged murderer, convicted murderer, and that was granted some sort of review or new trial as well. So the documentary folks, audio and video, are getting a couple people out of jail. It may be, but is this any more, do you think, than a couple of examples? Is this going to have any significant effect on the world?
So, nonfiction filmmakers always want to make films that have impact. Like that's what we're wired to do. We want to expose injustice. We want to make change. We want to shine a bright light. But documentaries have historically not been able to reach enough people in theaters in any kind of way that galvanized kind of a public uprising of feelings. And so it might be that we're seeing the beginning of a new chapter where the combination of social media and, unlimited access and the ability for people to say to their friends, you got to see this Making of a Murderer thing, like so that it really ripples through. I mean, it got a lot of secondary media coverage, that documentary, and I think it's a big deal. As a filmmaker, it makes me excited.
I've got to say I have a mixed reaction to it. On the one hand, and this is important, anybody wrongly convicted who is let out, regardless of the circumstances, it's a good thing, right? But it's also true that if you're going to invest corporate money of the scale that Netflix does for a 10-part series, you need to have a lot of things that have nothing to do with justice to be worth that investment. It has to be telegenic. There has to be a reasonable chance that the guy is in fact innocent. There's got to be access to sources. I mean, there's got to be a lot of stuff that makes it entertainment, and that is a high hurdle. And so there are people who have untelegenic situations but are also locked up unfairly that aren't going to get Netflix to the rescue.
I just want to say, we're going to get email on this show saying, Saul, you really believe that Stephen Avery is telegenic?
And
I mean, I have to tell you, when I started watching it the first time, I found the combination of the kind of local news footage and the shaky cam and Stephen Avery, my first reaction was, I can't watch this. and I shut it off. And then a week later, I came back and I gave it another try. And I know I'm not alone in that. I've heard other people say that. Like, it, in many ways, these are very unappealing characters. The story is jaw-dropping, but it's not like it's not like it's.
But didn't the lawyers on that become like cult heroes and are getting like marriage proposals coming in over the transom? So I mean, they're worth.
I'll put it to you this way: there's nobody in that series that you would say is classically attractive. I mean, yes, some of them became famous as a result of it because it got widely viewed, but I don't think they're lawyer sex symbols or anything close to that. In any case,
you think the Ted Sarandos and the folks at Netflix greenlighted it, saying, we think that everybody on here is repulsive and that this isn't interesting and it's sort of a messy story, but damn, we might well be doing justice. I mean, there's something about that made them think it was good television.
No, stop a second. I don't think, I'm not by any means suggesting that, Reed Hastings or Ted Sarandos, are looking for the justice gene to be fired. I think that they thought it was a good story, well told, and could be compelling. But I think part of what makes Netflix such an interesting partner, from a filmmaker perspective, is they really are the production partner equivalent of patient capital. Like they don't. The fact that it turned out to be a hit and be a big hit was, I don't think, in the equation. I think they thought it was a good story and the filmmakers were talented and it needed to be done. And I don't think that they're, I know them a little bit, and I don't think that they are looking for kind of like short-term wins in that way.
Right, but they still have some sort of standard that they have to apply. Now, every journalistic organization does. I've got to say, I'd feel more comfortable that there was a net force for good if there was something that looked a little more like a 60 Minutes, that had a portfolio, right? Most journalistic organizations have a mix of stuff they know that's going to be popular and a certain amount of stuff they do because it's good for the world. And you can justify that budget more easily if you've got a regular staff rather than stories that have to also be businesses. Every documentary is its own corporation and has to live or die on its own. And I think that that's a high burden to, and good stuff can happen, and the more documentaries, the better. But I still worry that it puts a lot of show business standard on a force for good.
I rarely come down so clearly on the side of, like, I tend to think things are gray, but in this case, I just think if documentary filmmakers can connect their passion and their conviction and their storytelling skills to media like Netflix that can potentially connect to social media, that can get the public engaged enough to want to make change, I think good things come of that. And I'm fired up.
Good things will happen. I don't know that good things will happen distributed as fairly as if there were other economic structures.
Well, such as what?
Such as people, there is some standard of storytelling that gets applied to these things that's separate from the standard of likelihood of being innocent. And are there people available to talk? I mean, there's just a bunch of practical things. Even if you're saying we trust our storytelling ability to be able to tell a story with unattractive characters, there's something that you are trying to do that's attractive, and there are circumstances that you just don't have the material. There are lots of, if you're a documentary maker, you're looking for, something that's going to be really compelling. And not all justice is compelling.
I think compelling is different than attractive, but let's leave it as Netflix and justice. The story will continue to unfold, but for filmmakers everywhere, it's a good day.
No question for filmmakers. No question for, again, I said this right at the beginning. Any innocent person who is let out of jail for whatever purpose, this is good. So I'm not, I'm just, I'm mulling some of the consequences of sort of hit-based production and journalism, but you take what you can get.
So moving on to our second chapter, which is old media eating new media. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but haven't you been saying for a while this is the natural order of things, and old media is going to come in and dine out on the surviving new media? Isn't that essentially your view of this?
I don't think. I mean, people with money buy stuff that's for sale, and if you do a startup, it's for sale. So absolutely, and I mean there were a bunch of deals recently. Refinery 29 got some money from Turner, Time Warner, and there was a piece that caught your attention in Digiday that was sort of calling out how shocked the author was, Sahil Patel, that these companies that allegedly were saying that old media was dinosaurs and no one's going to watch cable, how could they possibly be taking money from the Time Warners and the News Corps of the world? And it struck me that piece was just profoundly naive. Of course they're going to take money from people who are offering it, and these guys who want strategic investments are likely to offer you a better deal than rapacious venture capitalists, higher valuations. So what's the surprise? I mean, I agree, yeah.
All right, so let's use as an example. So here are the two poster childs of not taking money. Facebook famously offered $1 billion from Yahoo.
Well, that was to sell rather than as a strategic investment. The examples in Patel's story were all...
Okay, but presumably these are strategic investments. You don't know what the underlying structure is. It might be, we'll buy 49%, but we have the right to buy the other 51%. I mean, if things are going in the direction you think they're going in, they're all going to sell to large media.
No, everybody would rather be Facebook. Nobody...
But Zuckerberg had balls the size of mountains that when he went to his board and said, look, I mean, in fact, I think he didn't even really consider it. He was like, are you kidding me? And we're not taking and then ironically what happens to Zuckerberg is the exact same thing happens to him with Snapchat, where he goes to them and says, hey, listen, guys, this is a great little thing you built. Why don't we write you a check for $3 billion? And the Snapchat guys at that point with no revenue say, yeah, no, we're gonna be big. And similarly, what I thought Sahil wrote, and I mean I think he's a terrific writer and he's a friend, so I didn't think it was a naive article, or I wouldn't have suggested we talk about it. I think what he wrote is if we're really not done reinventing the nature of web media, wouldn't it be great if some of these companies that are on the verge of inventing new things didn't hand over the keys to
Why? What difference does it make?
So you're saying it wouldn't have mattered if Facebook sold to Yahoo?
Well, again, there's a huge difference in selling and taking investment.
Okay.
And so right now, Vice is still run by Shane. He just got a shitload of capital from News Corp to go play with, and Vox. These are still.
So you think Vice is as much a disruptor post it being a cable television provider and an HBO provider and all these things?
Well, I don't think that taking the money from News Corp made them any more conventional, except for the fact that the bigger you get, the more you have to do ordinary things, because you can't keep growing like that most of the time otherwise. But it's
I gotta say, I'm not hearing Vice's name kicking around nearly as much as I did.
Because nobody actually watches it. But that's
there you go.
But that has nothing. all the more reason why Shane should have sold a shit ton of the stock right before everyone was going to forget about them. That's
I guess for me, I think there is an old media alignment that says we really want to reach mass audience. So can you gather up a whole bunch of teenage girls or a whole bunch of young, millennial guys, and can you make them all watch the same video at the same time so we can sell them something? And I thought that web media was going to be more granular than that, more nichey, more edgy, more narrowcast. And so, to me, watching Refinery 1089 occasionally look more like a big media company. Just, big media wants big audience, right?
And big advertisers want big audience. And, oh, by the way, big investors want big payback. And you know what? Big startup executives would rather be running big companies and make big money and have big audiences. And
I don't know. Maybe we should check in and ask Ariana about that.
The one who sold her company to the phone company?
She didn't sell a no. You know better than that. She sold the company to AOL. AOL sold themselves to the phone company.
Okay.
I think from the minute the Verizon deal was done, she said, check, please.
And so what do you make of that?
I think that there is a natural tension between impactful quality and, the New York Times doesn't wake up in the morning going, what can we put on the cover that's going to sell the most number of papers today?
And the New York, that's very true. And the New York Times has a very, it's a business model that's very different from lots of other media companies.
And has its own challenges and is not having a particularly easy go of it any more than anything else. But I guess if I could go in a time machine and go back 5 years, I would like us to be sitting here today with there being 5 companies that look like the New York Times, not one, and 5 new digital, a great, so you mentioned before we started the podcast about Cheddar. I'd love Cheddar to be successful, and I'd love there to be a Cheddar for...
Cheddar is a new live streaming video service for millennials. It's sort of, CNBC meets BuzzFeed.
So for me, if I got one, if you handed me the genie in a bottle and I could rub it and make one wish, my wish would be that that when we're all connected via broadband internet pipes, that we get to watch more things that more suit our individual passions, interests, intellectual curiosity, as opposed to trying to get everybody back together to watch the same thing. So to me, and that was what I read in Sahil's piece, was that he was saying...
I'm not sure that's really, so if you look at our friends Verizon, we talk about a lot, right? Their best idea is this Go 90 thing, which is trying to glom together a whole bunch of stuff, not necessarily millions of things, but hundreds of things. I think everything I look on it is, homogenized and, too bland for words, but they're not exactly replicating Viacom.
All right, so which brings us to the place where we may fundamentally disagree more than in past shows. So we pulled 5 apps.
You pulled.
Fair enough. I pulled 5 apps that are in the video space, getting some traction, starting to grow. I think there's some real, in some of the patterns, I think there's some real things to be discovered here.
Cool. So make us your pitch. We're the investment committee. What have you found and why is it cool?
All right, so let's start with Musical.ly.
Okay.
So Musical.ly is rapidly stealing the thunder that Snapchat has had almost to itself for the last 2 years. It is growing like crazy. It's got real connection among particularly young web users. And there are three things about it that I find interesting. One, there's no hey, we're kind of saying we're mobile first. It is a mobile app. It is a video app, and it
does
is mobile. What?
And what happens when you use the app? What does it do?
Basically you can sing along with your favorite music.
Okay.
So it's a lip sync app.
Okay.
And to me, it does two things that make this trend interesting. One, it gives people something to play with. Like,
yep.
If you say to a young person, hey, to be social today, you have to make X pieces of content a day. I mean, maybe you're a great photographer, maybe you're funny on camera, but maybe you really don't. You need a little inspiration. And music's great. It gives you a thing to do, and it's fun to play with.
That makes a lot of sense to me. People like to be a part of culture they already know. So letting you remix yourself into your favorite pop song or whatever it is that you're into feels like that is playing into, human behavior trends that we know are very powerful.
And the traffic says it's working. Traffic says people and
do we know how they've managed the rights? Do they have the rights to everything? Do they only have a little bit of, do they have to cut special deals with everybody?
So I know the answer to that as regards their competitor.
Okay.
So just the end of the Musical.ly story is they've raised $100 million, which is a lot of cheddar, and on a $500 million valuation. So they've got a lot of smart people with deep pockets saying they're going to be the next big thing. You can decide whether or not that makes them the leader. The earlier play before Musical.ly was an app called Dubsmash, and Dubsmash was around before Musical.ly. Similar, basically lip sync app. Good early traction. They had some real questions asked about their legal basis. And their position kind of broadly is, we think that taking short little clips of music and lip syncing them and sharing them with a handful of your friends doesn't count as publishing. We think that's like you playing something on your record player for your friends who come over to your house. We don't see that as copyright infringement. And so far, they've been left alone.
Okay. And we just think that the record companies are going to be just tolerant of the remix culture and innovation and not just let all flowers bloom.
Well, no, there's no history that says that they're going to be good guys. I just think, I think that they need to be able to have a legal argument that they're going to win. And, if you came over to my house and I turned my stereo on and I played, a song that I liked and said, check it out, that wouldn't be copyright infringement, would it?
If I put it on the radio.
No, it's not the radio.
Okay.
This
is only person to person. There's no public tweeting or
no. There's person there. You're asking exactly the right question. I think the industry is trying to figure out what the line is between a handful of friends enjoying something together and something that if I had 10 friends over and played a piece of music, you wouldn't think of that as a copyright infringement. If on the other hand I put the speakers out the window and there was a dance party outside on the street, you have to think about where the music industry wants to draw the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's fair use. It's vaguely a remix, and so you could try and make a fair use argument. The challenge is if this is 100% of the business of this company, it's not incidental, and there's a lawsuit there, or there's a deal to be done,
or both, most likely.
And it may well be that both sides think it's better to see how it grows up and then do a deal when you can figure out how big the thing is.
And by the way, Dub Smash is also doing little clips of TV shows. They're doing more pop culture stuff, broader than music.
Okay.
But in both cases, Dub Smash and Musically, they're driving growing social networks around lip sync. Have you ever done a lip sync?
When I went to Tokyo, I had to do some karaoke in order to get my business done.
Is there video of this? Because I'd really like to see.
No, this was in another millennium. But I think I sang "I Left My Heart in San Francisco" or some, karaoke classic.
So the last of these three in the lip sync area is this company Triller, and Triller's actually really surprisingly charming. It's easy to use. It allows you to record multiple takes of your whatever the word is, you're lip syncing, you're performing to the song, and then it kind of mixes it up and edits it automatically and turns it into what feels fairly quickly like a real music video, like with not a lot of effort. You have very little control, so you can't it's not like you're picking the shots and editing it. It's not Final Cut Pro, but it's I've seen a bunch of them, and they are they're surprisingly charming. And
a very fine way of sending something to your girlfriend or whatever you want to do. Do people post these all on their Facebook? They must.
They get posted all over. They're on Instagram. Yeah. They're on Facebook. They're on
all right,
Twitter.
So we have 3 startups around a trend. The trend feels like it has a size to it. Whether you can build a whole business around this, or whether you have to do what Snapchat did and build a completely different business on the back of whatever got you some reach. Which one would you bet on if you had to pick one?
Well, I mean, just based on traffic and dollars, I'd say you got to bet on Musically at this point.
That's showing a lot of faith in the venture capital.
No, the traffic is enormous, and the buzz.
Do you think they also
enormous.
have a better app or not?
They're different. They're different.
Okay.
All right. So we have two more startups. VidMe is the one that I like better than you.
Okay.
There's a photo sharing site that powers a lot of the back end of Reddit called Imager.
Yeah.
And VidMe is the video equivalent of Imager. It's built by guys that come out of the Reddit world. It has a lot. In fact, it's a chunk of the funding comes from Alexa Ohanian. It's if you look at it, it looks fairly bare bones and not that snappy. But its connection to Reddit has been its, superpower.
Okay, and that feels like a nice small business. Right? I mean, Reddit is a big thing, but, do you think that News Corp got anywhere near the value that it hoped for out of PhotoBucket, which was the big, the Imager before Imager? I think that those things come and go, and there are back-end services that don't build, sustainable consumer loyalty. They're just a convenient thing that you use for a while.
So Imager's been around a long time.
Okay.
And it's surprisingly sticky and fairly bare bones. I think the question you're asking, which I don't know the answer to, is what is VidMe's, does it want to be, if you think about it, Reddit's been around a very long time, and it's fairly straightforward, and it hasn't changed a whole lot. I mean, you don't hear about its traffic every day. It doesn't have a competitor. You know, it's kind of a little like Wikipedia in that it's part of one of the fundamental chunks of the internet, and it just seems to own a big chunk of it. And I think the strategy of VidMe is to do the same thing. By the way, we're running a little tight for time. So,
all right. So the last startup is.
So the last startup is the one that's the hardest one to judge, which is Channel. And by the way, it's channel.WTF, which I've never seen before. Have you ever seen a WTF extension?
Somebody who spent $200 million or $200,000 on the domain rights is happy that he or she got one sale at least. Okay.
It promises to be the most, you know, like all of these guys, and part of why I wanted to have this conversation is all of them are trying to think about the fact that, you know, they're saying mobile is not a stepping stone to another thing. Mobile is the future of web video. And if mobile is the future of web video, then we need fundamentally different apps to both produce it and consume it. And there's a lot of money trying to figure that out.
And I say the same thing. You know, I'm a broken record on this. Absolutely true, but if you make an app that doesn't stand for anything because you want to have all the apps, you're going to lose because there's no reason for anybody to download yet another thing that can get you random everything.
So Channel is built by the guys that built Swipe, and they really
Swipe the productivity app for the to-do list.
Nah, I'm not even sure.
Okay.
They raised a lot of money. They've raised almost $8 million. They're going to really try and build a different kind of video app. And all I'll say to our podcast listeners and viewers is just, like, I would keep an eye on Channel. I would.
And do you see anything that's any different than Go90 or Watchable or 100,000 other ones?
Oh, yeah. No. It's a creation. None of those are all destinations for existing videos. Okay. Channel is a creation tool.
And what does it let you do as a creator that you can't do some other way?
They are only hinting at a bunch of stuff they're building. It's
right.
But I wish I could sign up for the let me know when you go live thing. They don't seem to have one yet. So with that, our hot summer continues. Those are, as far as I'm concerned, 5 hot startups. You can say 5 moderately lukewarm startups, and we'll keep an eye on them.
No, 3 startups in, you know, what's clearly a significant market that has a reason to be, and 2 startups that don't have any reason to be.
I think the numbers in the case of VidMe would push back on that. But in any case, we are out of time. Saul, lovely to see you again.
Sorry, I yet again am playing the Grinch, but have a great dog days, and we'll see you all very soon.
Have a great week. Hack on.
Keep on hacking.